These little switches may not look like much, but if you had to replace them, they get very, very expensive. So we're going to try and take them off, preserve the screws. We'll be replacing the screws with new screws, but these are all expensive parts. Once you've got those two screws out, you should just be able to unplug this plug here. It'd be a little bit rusted, so I'll do that off camera. If you are an impatient person, do not even bother attempting to take an old rusty Mercedes to pieces, because if you just try and force that off and you snap that plug or snap this and you end up having to buy a new one, you can pay, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 pounds just for this little piece here. So we're just going to carefully wedge a screwdriver under that, use a little bit of penetrating fluid just so that comes off nice and easily. This is a true story. My father-in-law, who is a test engineer, they had a bunch of postgraduates, i.e. people who want to become doctors of engineering, etc., that wanted to join the particular engineering company that he works for, and he set them a little challenge, which was, how do you light a light bulb with just a battery and one piece of wire? And you know, not one person on that PhD course can actually answer the question. So I'm just very quickly going to test this light bulb from the boot light and see if it works using just this 12-watt battery and this one piece of wire. This is how you do it. Just wrap a piece of wire around the edge of the bulb like so, and touch the bottom of the bulb on one terminal and the other one on the other terminal, and if you're lucky, the bulb will light up. So after 20 years, that Mercedes boot bulb is still working. It's incredibly easy to break these bulbs when you get them out, especially if they haven't moved for 20 years. So just to let you know how you put these in, the two little nodules here slide down a channel like this, and to lock the bulb in with this plug facing towards your face, you're going to be turning the bulb, you're going to be pushing it down and turning it clockwise. So that means that if you're faced with this situation and the bulb doesn't want to come out, obviously put a little bit of WD-40 in there. To get the bulb out, you're going to be pushing it down and turning it anti-clockwise, and it should just slide out like that. And let's just see if this switch works. After cleaning up the contacts, you can see that that switch works perfectly after 20 years. Now, having gone to all the trouble of getting that out, cleaning all the contacts and getting it working, it transpires that the boot lid or trunk lid on the red 280 SL project car is actually from a later car, and the later cars had a different style of boot light, like this. Different bulb, different fitting, different switch, etc. On the later style boot lights, the switch itself actually slides out. You just squeeze together these two fittings and this comes out. So if you ever need to replace just this bit, I believe that's available as a separate part. And the way this goes together is there's a spade fitting in here that's loose, and those spades face away from the light bulb, and when you slide this in, one of those terminals there fits into the spade, and on the other side here is where you'll have two connectors, wires in the car. These newer style, part number 201-820-1211. Older style switch, which is used in many different models of Mercedes, 110-825-0041. I've never had one of these R107 SLs where the trunk light or boot light has actually worked, and this car here, which we've pretty much finished refurbishing, is no exception. You can see that people have tried to modify things and add bits and pieces. This switch here doesn't work. There should be two wires here running along here, held on by these clips. So in the first instance, we're going to whip this switch out and just replace it with the one that we've just refurbished from the gold parts car, which we know definitely works. This is the switch we've just taken out of the 1983 280 SL, and when you hold a 9-volt battery across those two terminals, that should light up. Now at this stage we don't know if that's the bulb that's at fault or the switch. This is the switch that we've refurbished from the gold car, so let's just try changing the light bulbs first. Okay, so we've got the light bulb from the red 280 SL in there, and we can see that that works just fine. So we can see that in this particular case, this switch is faulty. Now it might just be dirty contacts, but it's very, very common for these switches to fail because they get used an awful lot. Every time you open the boot or the trunk, the switch is in operation. So we'll take that back and just clean it up and see if we can get that to work. But meanwhile, we've got a working light bulb and a working switch, so we'll just whip that in. It gives me great pleasure to take this non-standard wiring and switch off. See, somebody's drilled a hole in there now, but we can probably just clean it up, paint it, and either just fill it with a piece of metal or we'll figure something out there. But here is where the working light should go. We found the original wires behind this panel, and in theory when I plug that in, that bulb should come on, which it does, and when I press the button it should go off, which is perfect. Just using a piece of wire to pull this plug through there like so. Good. Get all the way up there, be attached to here. The wire should be hidden behind. Just do it loosely to start off with. Make sure everything still works. These wires should be held in with these clips like this, and this part of the clip there clips onto here, and the wire sits in the channel. It's probably a very obvious thing to say, but the clip goes where you have this insulation here, so there's no chance that you'll ever rub the insulation off the two wires. Got the clips on. Just before we clip them onto the boot here, I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of lube on there, just so to avoid scratching the paint off when you put the clips on. It's very common when people get hold of your Mercedes that they'll start putting things in there that shouldn't be in there. That trunk light or boot light was held in with these self-tapping screws. It should actually be held in with just a small screw like that. Now this is from the gold parts car. It's a little bit rusty. We'll get some new ones of those, but put that in meanwhile just to test it. Okay, that's one trunk light fixed. In the history of this car, the trunk light has never worked. That's now working. Now that light doesn't look very bright in daylight, but for the first time since I've owned this car, I can open the boot and hey presto, we've actually got light. Let's get onto the project car and see if we can get that working. This particular wiring doesn't fit into that slot up there, so I'm just putting it on the end here, and that should in theory just clip in there like so, which it does, not held in with any screws. And if we connect a 9-volt battery up here, we should be able to test to see if that light works. It's definitely working. See if I can one-handedly turn it off with the switch. Yes, I can. The later boot lids or trunk lids were not only differentiated by the fact that they had a different light switch there, but the actual star on them is different as well. This is off the earlier gold parts car, and if you have a look through there, you can see that the star is actually held on by a single nut, whereas on these cars here it's held on by 3 plastic lugs. There are 3 holes in the boot and 3 plastic lugs clip on the back of 3 studs in that star to keep it on. I'm going to leave this video here. I was hoping to actually join these 2 wires up, but it transpires that this is actually cut way too short. It should be much longer, and it should be clipped to the side of the hinge here. I do have a spare clip, so I'll do that off camera. And I think in the next video I'm intrigued to see if I can take a piece of boot chrome. All the boot chrome on this car is completely pitted, corroded, knackered, and probably beyond hope, but I'm going to see if I can use a technique to get it back to something that we can actually put on the car, because these bits of chrome are phenomenally expensive. We've put the boot chrome on here. That just leaves us the seal. I think I'm going to do a whole separate video on how to glue in the rubber seals, what type of glue to use, and what the technique is. If anyone's got any comments that they'd like to make, if you've glued seals in yourself and either had good experience or bad experience with different products, please do leave me a comment in the comment section below. The old style boot light switches are still available. I think they're common to the Mercedes Pagoda, the 113 Pagoda as well. It's the part number there, but they're actually a bit more expensive than I thought. £76.20 here in the UK. You can put that part number in to eBay and get a second-hand one for a bit less than that. I've mentioned these guys before, Classic Mercedes Parts. That's the internet address up there. You can pick up one of these new style switches from them for about £24.99, and that switch is common to many different models of Mercedes.